General Motors is rewriting the rules of the auto game. After years of moving production to Mexico, GM just announced a massive $4 billion investment to bring factories and jobs back to the United States. This move isn't just about assembly lines. It's a bold response to politics, tariffs, and shifting buyer demands. If you're into auto industry power plays and want real insights without the fluff, make sure to subscribe to our channel now. We're breaking it all down with facts that matter. So why did GM move production to Mexico in the first place? The answer? Cost. Lower wages, looser regulations, and favorable trade agreements made Mexico the go-to for building vehicles like the Chevy Equinox and Blazer. It allowed GM to protect profits and stay competitive globally. But while investors were happy, American workers were left behind, and the political backlash grew louder. That's where Donald Trump enters the frame. His America First agenda and repeated threats of 25% tariffs on foreign-made cars shook the industry. GM and Trump had a rocky relationship. He publicly slammed them for layoffs and Mexican imports in 2018 and 2019. But now, GM's strategy seems to align with his message. By reinvesting in U.S. plants, GM not only dodges tariffs, but also positions itself politically. It's a rare case of business and politics locking step. For American buyers, this move has real consequences. Trucks and SUVs built in the U.S. could now qualify for more federal incentives. There's also rising consumer demand for made-in-America vehicles, especially as tensions with China and Mexico remain high. GM sees the writing on the wall. Customers want value and patriotism. Deliver both, and you dominate the market. So, why is GM pouring $4 billion back into the U.S. now? It's all about flexibility and control. With demand for EVs cooling and gas-powered cars still going strong, GM needs factories that can adapt fast. The upgraded U.S. plants in Kansas, Michigan, and Tennessee will handle both electric and internal combustion vehicles. That's a strategic hedge, preparing for any market swing without relying on imports or unstable policy environments. And this isn't just about technology, it's about jobs and public image. By investing billions into American plants, GM is signaling to workers, unions, and lawmakers that it's committed to U.S. industry. The United Auto Workers, who've clashed with automakers over offshoring for years, have already praised the move. It strengthens GM's hand in future labor talks and rebuilds trust with communities that have seen factories vanish over the past 2 decades. Behind the scenes, this also gives GM more control over its supply chain. Building closer to home means faster delivery, lower shipping costs, and fewer disruptions, especially after COVID exposed just how fragile overseas manufacturing can be. By localizing production, GM can react faster to market demand, pivot, model offerings, and stabilize vehicle pricing. That's not just smart logistics, it's survival strategy in today's unpredictable economy. Meanwhile, this $4 billion shift puts direct pressure on rivals like Ford, Stellantis, and Toyota. If GM starts cranking out trucks and SUVs more efficiently on U.S. soil, others will be forced to respond. We could see a new wave of reshoring across the entire American auto landscape. And in a presidential election year, this is political gold. Expect leaders from both parties to use GM's move as proof their policies are working, whether that's tariffs, tax credits, or labor reform. But the stakes go far beyond politics. GM's decision to reinvest in American soil is also a calculated bet on the long-term economics of domestic manufacturing. Energy costs in the U.S. are more stable compared to other countries, and automation has reduced the labor cost gap between the U.S. and Mexico. With cutting-edge robotics and modular assembly lines, GM believes it can produce vehicles in the U.S. competitively without sacrificing margins. At the same time, this move is aimed squarely at buyers who are growing more selective and value-driven. With the rise of social awareness around where products are made, GM wants its customers to associate its badge with American jobs and quality. By stamping "Built in the USA" on future Blazers, Equinoxes, and Bolts, GM is trying to win hearts, not just wallets. Another layer is tax incentives. Federal and state governments are offering billions to companies that manufacture clean vehicles and batteries domestically. By moving production stateside, GM positions itself to grab a larger slice of those subsidies, especially crucial as it tries to cut EV prices and expand access to middle-class buyers. But GM isn't just chasing handouts. This investment also reflects a deeper strategic shift, diversifying risk. Overdependence on one country, whether Mexico or China, has proven dangerous. Political instability, labor strikes, or supply chain interruptions can cripple production. By spreading its manufacturing footprint more evenly, GM builds resilience against future disruptions that could paralyze its global operations. That resilience could become GM's greatest asset in the next decade. As global supply chains get more unpredictable and trade tensions escalate, companies that can pivot quickly and produce locally will win. GM's $4 billion isn't just about factories. It's about agility. It's about owning more of the value chain, reducing reliance on external suppliers, and tightening control over quality, costs, and timing. There's also a cultural and branding advantage. American-built vehicles have always carried a certain pride factor, especially in the truck and SUV segments. GM knows that heartland buyers, fleet operators, and government agencies are watching. For them, a Chevy built in Kansas or Michigan means more than horsepower. It means loyalty, identity, and community. That emotional value is priceless in a market flooded with choices. And let's not forget the ripple effect. When GM invests billions into a plant, it's not just assembly lines that benefit. Entire local economies get a boost. Suppliers, logistics companies, diners, schools, and real estate markets. Towns that were losing population and struggling to survive suddenly see new life. That's the hidden economic engine GM is reigniting, and it adds political capital that can pay off for decades. From a competitive standpoint, GM is also sending a message to Wall Street. After years of being criticized for chasing margins over manufacturing depth, this move signals a return to fundamentals. It's a long-term play, less about next quarter's earnings, more about surviving and thriving in the next industrial era. And Wall Street is taking notice. Investors see this not just as a patriotic gesture, but as a hedge against future volatility. With electric vehicle adoption still uncertain and government policy shifting with each election, betting big on flexible, US-based production reduces exposure to global shocks. It also puts GM in a stronger position to capitalize on any sudden surges in domestic demand or regulatory incentives tied to local manufacturing. Meanwhile, GM's competitors, especially Ford and Tesla, will be watching closely. Ford has already made similar moves, but not at this scale or with this level of integration between EV and traditional vehicle production. And while Tesla builds in the US, its supply chain remains heavily global. If GM's investment pays off, it could signal a strategic blueprint for how legacy automakers can rebuild their manufacturing ecosystems without falling behind in the EV race. It's also a preemptive move against any potential reshoring mandates in the future. If US trade policy tightens again, or if new tariffs hit vehicles imported from Mexico or Asia, GM is now positioned to absorb the shock better than most. By building that buffer now, GM is protecting its pricing power and insulating its customers from sudden sticker shock caused by policy swings. Ultimately, this $4 billion reinvestment is GM doubling down on the idea that its future lies not just in electrification, but in where and how those vehicles are built. It's about winning the next decade, not just with sleek designs or battery range, but with smart logistics, community ties, and political foresight. And winning the next decade will require more than innovation. It'll require trust. Trust from American workers who've watched plants close for years. Trust from buyers who want their money to support domestic jobs. Trust from policymakers looking for partners in national industrial growth. GM is betting that by showing up big, by putting billions into American soil, it can rebuild that trust and cement its place as more than just a car company, but a national industrial force. It's a full-circle moment. For decades, GM offshored to chase profits. Now it's returning home to protect its future. The Blazer, Equinox, and Bolt won't just be symbols of product lines. They'll be symbols of a strategic pivot. And if the gamble pays off, they might also become case studies in how American manufacturing makes a comeback, not just with nostalgia, but with modern, forward-looking strategy. This shift is not without risk. Labor costs will be higher, execution must be flawless, and any delay or cost overrun could make headlines. But GM clearly believes the rewards outweigh the risks, and that long-term stability, local control, and political goodwill are worth the premium.